Pod Candy,
a podcast about cults, crimes, and killers. The Way Down, God, Greed, and the Cult of Gwen Shamblin on HBO Max is the chilling true story of a woman who turned faith into fear and devotion into control. Gwen Shamblin rose to fame in the 1990s with the Way Down Workshop, a Christian weight loss program that promised spiritual freedom through self-denial. But behind the glossy sermons and the big hair was something darker. Gwen didn't just want followers. She wanted absolute obedience. Her Remnant Fellowship Church became a world of strict rules, public shaming, and total control over its members' bodies, families, and souls.
Then came the scandals, the abuse allegations, the manipulation, and finally the shocking plane crash in 2021 that killed Gwen, her husband Joe Lara, and other top leaders, leaving behind a trail of trauma and unanswered questions.
Outside my window, it's only raining. When the wind blows, I feel pain. I don't need no doctor. Baby, I'm not sick. My body's been locked up, broken ever since.
So who the hell are we?
I'm Stacey, and I own a theater school.
And I'm Dori, I'm a corporate recruiter.
Those are our professions, but this is our obsession.
We're just a couple of broads obsessed with cults and true crime.
When we decided to do a podcast, we wanted it to feel different and fresh. Enter Dr. John Mayer. He's a real qualified expert, and he is here to answer all of our deep, dark questions.
He's an actual doctor.
Dr. John is the real deal. He has been on countless cases evaluating criminals. He will be able to keep us honest and allow us to dive deeper and answer the whys and hows of this crazy shit.
Okay, so now that that's out of the way, let's discuss Gwen Shamblin.
Very high hair.
So, I think the overall view that I got from watching this documentary is that anorexia causes cults. Is that something that you also kind of thought about, that you have to be, at least for Remnant Church, you kind of have to be anorexic to be a part of this cult?
Well, in order to be accepted by Gwen, you had to give yourself to God.
Welcome to the Way Down Workshop. I'm so excited that you have made the decision to come this direction. And you can count on me and the staff here to be praying for you every week. Do you not know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you've received from God? You're not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your body.
God could help you with weight loss, which also, i.e., cutting down on calories, starving yourself, fasting, all these things were for God. So when people use God, they automatically have a defense. They don't have to say anything. They can use the religion as spiritual manipulation, which happens in most cults, all cults. There's manipulation and mostly spiritual and religious. And this spiritual and religious manipulation kept people involved. And the more, I don't know if you know this, or maybe you do, when you're hungry, you tend to be very agreeable and tired,
You get hangry?
You get hangry. And, I think you're vulnerable to become brainwashed. That's the word I'm trying to use. So you're vulnerable to become brainwashed, and you start to lose weight, and then you think it's working, and then you join the church, and then you're part of this, and then she's telling you that you can't go to heaven if you're fat, and all these crazy cockamamie things that she's saying.
Every time you want to go to food, and it may be 15, 20 times a day, run to God. What I do in this program is teach people how to stop bowing down to the refrigerator and how to bow back down to Him.
So this is essentially like a person who is in nutrition, Gwen Shamblin, right?
Yes.
She wrote a book about nutrition and then became this cult leader because her husband was more into the ministry. Gwen writes this book and then starts getting this following through the church, right? But it's based on losing weight kind of for the Lord, like what you were saying.
Right.
So I'm just thinking like myself, like I'm a curvy gal. Like I
Me too.
think, yeah. So like initially I'd be like, oh yeah, like, okay, I want to lose weight. Like this is good. But then when you're in it, and these people that talked about this in the documentary, it's essentially starving yourself for the greater good of the Lord. I don't know if that would be something then that me personally would stay in like a lot of these other people for like 10 plus years just to be skinny. And some of these people, just like Gwen Shamblin is like a stick. She's what they call like a lollipop, like the bigger head with the humongous hair and the really tiny stick body.
Yeah.
I don't know if I personally would be able to follow this.
I would never be able to do it.
To go to heaven. Like that's the goal, right? You all want to get to heaven.
Yeah, and I'm confused about that too, but maybe it's because we're the Jews, but like
the Jews, we believe in heaven. We believe in heaven, but
yeah, but it's not, we don't want to go to another place. I mean, I'd rather be on earth. You know what I'm saying? I'd rather be on earth. But, there's people that were interviewed on the way down that got out of it. There's this cognitive dissonance at first, like, how did I get here? How did I believe this? Why did I believe this? And in this, no offense or anything, but it's not like all of them are thin. They weren't able to maintain the physique that and interestingly enough, don't you think, and this is in my opinion, this is all about Gwen's eating disorder, really. Everybody's dealing with her eating disorder.
Yes, everybody, that's essentially it. Like she created this eating disorder for herself, and then essentially it's just starving yourself.
It's
and then
starving
passing
yourself.
It
on. We should bring up the child abuse in this church because of the strict, and I've seen this in Mormonism and Scientology and all the other stuff we watch, which is this strict child rearing thing where no matter what, you discipline the child. This child is 3 months old or something and crying and wanting something, and you have to discipline them, and you have to, it's so backwards and crazy, but these people fall for it because they believe it. IBLP, which is the Institute for Basic Life Principles, which we're not talking about today necessarily, has exactly the same belief about this sort of abuse, and it sort of fosters this environment of fear and abuse and control and manipulation.
Jennifer and I have been blessed with this advice from Gwen, and I can't tell you what a difference it's made. A year ago, our 2.5-year-old Avery, we had a real showdown with her, and her will was ruling, and enough was enough, and we had a leg spanking over and over and over and over and over and over again, and that has been a different child.
So a couple of points, like obviously with the children abuse, yes,
Mm-hmm.
you and I have watched a lot of documentaries and listened to a lot of podcasts about cults,
Mm-hmm.
and this is no exception. Like why have kids if you're going to abuse them? And that seems to be a theme in a lot of these cults where essentially you are having children just to grow up and be a part of the church, just to procreate. So like that's kind of
Right.
and that's no exception with the remnant church. So you
No.
abuse them, you let
Right.
them cry, you hit them, I mean, again, this is
You
not
starve
just
them, you lock
you
them in a
starve
room.
them. Yes, this is not just the remnant church. This is
Right.
a lot of cults that are out there, but Gwen's church, but also too, yes, an eating disorder, and that others, this is what I'm fascinated about, is that so many people were and are still doing this for that greater good of the Lord. And you're so isolated from the
Yes.
outside world. You're not allowed to really research
Engage.
it, go on the internet and look
Right.
it up and what others are saying. So you just stay in this. And like you said, Stacey,
Mm-hmm.
most of these people are gaining it back. And then Gwen at the time, when she was alive, she is now
Mm-hmm.
dead, but at the time didn't want these people at the church physically. If you're big, you're not even allowed to attend church services.
Right. She wouldn't even want you on
You can
Zoom.
zoom in.
Yeah,
You can zoom
right.
in, everybody, but you're not allowed to step foot in the church if you are not still that physical, really stick thin body. That's insane
Yeah.
to
It's
me.
like she was trying to build an army of people that had this same belief. But we should talk about, you just touched on something, David Shamblin, her husband, her first husband, who she divorced. And, aside from, this a little aside, she didn't believe in divorce. She didn't allow people to get divorced. She didn't, this was a big no-no to her, except it was okay when she decided to get divorced.
All of those years, you have told people to suffer through their marriage, but then whenever the spirit hits you, and you'd have had a whole change of heart, well, now it's okay to get divorced.
One of the most amazing things about Gwen Shamblin is her perfect ability to completely control her history and act as if David Shamblin, her husband of 40 years, never existed.
I just don't understand how you can get divorced and then, before the ink is dry, you engage.
And this Joe Lara guy that she marries, this, kind of C-level actor, in my opinion, who was best known for Tarzan, he wasn't a religious guy. He wasn't even, he had no spiritual, but he saw dollar signs and money, and that was his pattern. So she divorced the other husband, David, because he was, unsatisfactory to look at probably. And also she just was bored, and this hot guy walks in, this hunk walks in, and she's like, oh, look at that guy. And the two of them together created this sort of plastic, persona, and had these friends, and they would fly around. And, when I was giving the overview of what happened, she was in, it's interesting, the way down. I never thought about this. The plane went down.
UEIGH. Oh,
it's, I didn't think of that. But, they were in this plane crash. This guy, Joe Lara, was flying the plane. He had really, it's like me saying I have a certificate, I have a certificate to fly a plane. I have no experience. He didn't know how to fly with instruments. And when you have bad weather or you don't know what's going on, you have to rely on the instruments. He did not know how to do that.
He didn't have a lot of hours in the specific airplane that he was flying because he was just recently certified to fly that plane. Currency is not the same as proficiency. He may have been current as far as the FAA was concerned, but maybe he didn't have enough time to be proficient.
They went down and they, then this caused this church. What happened to her? She's not supposed to die. So half of them didn't even believe it. They thought it was a conspiracy, that they were keeping her alive somewhere. How does she die? It's like this weird, like Eva Perón thing, but I'm not comparing it, but it's like this figure dies. Like, what do we do? How could she die when she said X, Y, and Z about all this stuff? So that created so much confusion. Elizabeth, her very, very, very anorexic looking daughter, in my opinion, takes over the church, but has never stepped foot in there since 2021, I believe. And her husband was one of the people that died in the plane crash.
Yeah, it's all very tragic. Totally off topic, but I just thought of Army of Waifs because we were talking about that Gwen was trying to bring together an army of waifs. Okay, so that's one thing.
Now, Dori, at this point in the segment, we should introduce really the one and only, the star, Dr. John Mayer. Dr. John Mayer, are you here with us? Come on, say
Thank
hello.
you for, finally including me on this great discussion. I've been wanting to pop in, so many times. So many things.
We got to build it. We got to build it, John.
That's right. They're tantalizing what you said. So, so shoot away. What kinds of things you want me to comment on,
John, we've talked about this before, and Dori and I discussed the Gwen Shamblin sort of look. And listen, I am not making fun of her. I'm not trying to disparage her. She's actually a beautiful woman.
She was.
Right. The evolution of her looks, as she got thinner and more powerful, her hair got bigger.
Well, let me comment on that.
That's what I wanted to ask. Let me comment on that
because in my experience with people like this who are head of these cults and groups, these nefarious groups, shall we say, their appearance always changes and always changes bizarrely, which kind of mimics their psychological and psychiatric state, that you can almost see a diagnosis in these people. In episodes to come, we're going to talk about a lot of these kind of leaders and different things, and including multi-level marketing schemes. And you see the founders evolve. And that's one thing we see in my field is your body appearance, the way you present yourself to the world is also indicative of what's going on inside of you. So Gwen goes from being, I thought at the beginning, an attractive woman, like you said, and then she becomes bizarre looking. And
like macabre, sort of.
And that's crazy, really an indication of her inner, dysfunction, demise, turmoil. Yeah.
So the other question I had is, what happens to these people? Like, this woman dies. They have this cognitive dissonance. These people that were following her, what happens? What happens to them? How do they deal with that?
Well, they become unhinged because their anchor is gone. What they believed in and why they were following it is taken away from them. So it's like any other loss in life, and maybe even more traumatic for people that because they put so much belief in. It's not like a relative dies. You don't necessarily lock, stock, and barrel believe in Uncle Charlie's strange beliefs. But when the person that you're following and taught to follow with strict obedience, which is one of the classic characteristics of these cults, this person is gone all of a sudden. It's like, whoa, you're a ship without an anchor, right?
Right.
So I have a question. So we mentioned her son David, who has left the cult.
I thought it was Michael. His son Michael.
Oh, son
Yes.
Michael. Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes,
See,
it's okay.
David is the
I
first
come from a
husband.
long line of dementia. Thank you, Dr. John.
Yes,
I come from
yes.
a long line of dementia.
It's
Michael.
okay. But Michael also, I should say, changed his name to Michael Black. He dropped the Shamblin, but keep going.
Yes.
Continue to listen to our podcast and be witness to Dori's increasing dementia as each of
Seriously, I may start my own cult of dementia.
Yes, maybe we need to take notes. I'll join your cult.
So Michael left, and even before Gwen's plane went down and she passed away, his mother, who he refers to as Gwen and not as his mother, so he got out. And he speaks very poorly about Remnant Church and Gwen. However, he doesn't say a lot about his sister Elizabeth. But Dr. John, I'm wondering, the whole documentary was about people like leaving and they have loved ones still in it, but they're trying to get them out. But I'm always curious for a family member who is so ingrained and brought up in a cult like Michael was, and to be able to get out, how does somebody have the courage to even think about it and do it?
Well, that speaks, Story, to his mental health. I mean, to me, and I watched the documentary like both of you did, he's the only one that seems to have a solid mental health. And that goes to his mental health, that he could question the beliefs and didn't ascribe wholeheartedly to beliefs. But here's a key element for him. Notice he fashioned himself as a musician and singer and, etc. So what does he have? He has a passion. He has an interest apart from the cult-like, philosophy and practices. So that's very important. And I see that in patients all the time in my work. It's so important to have that passion, something that's, yours and only yours. And that was his health right there. So that gave him the courage to go, well, okay, my mother and sister and all these people around me are interested in this, but I'm interested in music and I want to make music and, be a creator. So he could break away that way. So that's what you have in Michael.
Right. Oh, that's so interesting. I mean, he was indoctrinated for a while and he was sort of spouting the typical stuff that Gwen taught him.
He grew up with this. Yeah.
He grew up with it, but he was able to finally get divorced from this woman that he didn't want to be married to. She was so against divorce and so, she demonized so many things. I think it freed him. He was like, I have my own autonomy. I can do my own thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just to clarify for our audience.
Yeah.
Michael got divorced, but it was from his marriage was like an arranged marriage by Gwen, and I don't know if Joe Lara was in the picture at that time, but the church leaders, and I really hesitate calling this a church. To really, I have a hard time it coming out of my lips here. The church really arranged for him to marry this woman, which they did wholeheartedly with a lot of their followers. These zombie-like followers, these stick figures that were following him. And so he wasn't. You could even see in the documentary they showed a clip of the wedding, and it's almost like Michael's got a sour look on his face.
Poor guy. I mean,
one of these churches, it is the cult churches, I should say, and Stacey alluded to this earlier. It is a lot about the money. It's really it's the Lord is a vehicle to make money. So that's like the leader. So another question I have for Dr. John would be, so with her daughter who continues to be a part of the church, do you think that she is in it for the money, or do you think that she truly has a passion for helping people?
Good question.
Because I don't see a lot of help in a lot of these cults like Remnant Church, I see a lot of hindrance. I don't always see a lot of help. What do you think about Elizabeth, Dr. John?
Well, I might blow your mind with this response because my analysis of watching her, actually, if you watch her throughout the whole documentary, and I really would encourage, by the way, our audience to listen to our podcast, go and watch this documentary, then come back and listen to our podcast again, and you'll see, you get some good insights as to what we're talking about here. But just observe Elizabeth throughout this entire ordeal. She's waifish, she's quiet, she doesn't have the dynamism that her mother Gwen had. So, to answer your question more specifically, quite frankly, I think there's something very dysfunctional and very sickly going on with this young lady. First of all, she's almost skinnier and emaciated more than her mother, and it's a hard thing to say because her mother was so, stick-like. I loved your lollipop comment, Dori, by the way. It's such an accurate description of these people. But I think what's going on...
Army of waifs. Army of waifs.
Army of waifs. I like that too. The zombie waifs. But to wrap up what I'm talking about with Elizabeth here, I don't think she has the mental or physical wellness to be the type of leader that her mother was, and so going with the stick figure analogy here, she's like the stick figure leader of the church, not the leader. Yeah.
Well, they have all those people on the board, they have like 25, 30 people on the board. This is my opinion based on what you just said, John, and just thinking about this. I believe that she's not coming in because she's not dealing with it. I think she's making calls and making
what
statements.
I'm trying to get at, Stacey, I don't even think she has the mental or physical energy. I don't think she's well enough to be take an active role, except for an image,
But a lot of people depend on her because of money, that their jobs depend on a leader to continue. And, I'm sure all of us, Stacey and I especially, have watched all of these and listened to all of these documentaries, that there's always somebody who pops up if the leader goes to jail, or if they die, the original leader goes to jail, or if they die, that there's always somebody to step up. Elizabeth may be a reluctant leader of this church, but also, and Dr. John, I'm sure you can speak about this, but the brainwashing, especially with the kids, is probably so prevalent that Elizabeth may not even see that there is any other choice. She has to keep going, right?
Well, I think
there's just no other choice.
Oh, yeah. I think there's two things I want to comment on what you're saying, Dori. One is one of the foundation characteristics of cults is a charismatic leader, and they need a charismatic leader. And we see, and our audience will see in future episodes, all of these things always have a charismatic leader. Here it was Gwen. And you're right, it might be symbolically Elizabeth now, but they need a deity. They need someone that is calling the shots, so to speak, and has the truth. But you also bring up this whole child rearing thing and the kids. And we see this in a number of cults we're going to analyze in this program. And you have to understand about kids, and this is a very important point for our whole audience, especially parents out there, is that as kids develop, you have to understand that their whole world is the parents. For a long period of time in their development, everything is the parents. It's not SpongeBob, etc. Parents are so powerful in a kid's life that they're literally absorbing how to be a human being from their parents. So these kids that were born into this cult the Gwen Shamblin cult, I'm going to call it. They don't know any better. All they see is this is the way you are as an adult, as a human being.
Right.
Even more than as an adult, as a human being. This is what a human being does, and believes in.
Fear of your parents too, like you're also, like parents are the discipline.
Yeah.
You fear your parents too. So as a kid, I mean, even just like I was a regular kid, like I was always like, oh, I don't want to do anything to upset my parents.
Right.
Well, exactly right. And I think we have to underline for our listeners that this case where, first of all, the cult believed in strict discipline, including corporal punishment with kids, hitting them and, to the point where this poor couple was so caught up in things that they beat their son, who was challenged. It was a challenged boy, and they beat him so bad that he died. And these two parents were convicted, and I believe as I recall, they have life sentences for the murder of their child. I mean, that really needs to be underlined here in this story. A child died from being beaten because these people were following the rules of the church.
Yeah. And they left in a room for days with just a Bible,
This is Sonia Smith in Atlanta.
Sonia! And you have 4 children. Go ahead, Sonia.
Well, first, I wanted to thank you. Last week, my 7-year-old, he was going through some changes. He was very destructive. I did exactly what Ted told me to do, to spank him on the back of his thighs, take everything out of his room, and locked him in there from that Friday until Monday, and only left him in the room with his Bible. And I just praise God.
And that's just from obeying, setting those boundaries, making it clear, and just following God's lead. And so people need to know there's hope. And that's a miracle. You've got a child that's going from just bizarre down to in control. So I praise God.
So, while you were talking, it just brought up a thing for me. Do you think that Gwen believed what she was saying? Or do you think it was an act that maybe it started off as an act, but do you think it was really subconsciously her beliefs coming out? Or was it a way to get money? Which one? Or is it both?
I think you just said the answer right there. It was both, but the both evolved. I do think that this Gwen Shamblin, at the beginning of the start of this whole thing, really believed in what she was saying. And I think there's almost like an aha or whoa moment, like, wow, I can get other
This is working.
Yeah, it's working.
Right. Yeah.
And certainly she got caught up in not only is it working, but I'm getting, exceptionally rich by espousing this and having these followers. So I think that came later, but certainly fueled this cult from the beginning. But I think it started out with she believed this, and which brings me to a comment. It's maybe a little catty of a comment, but these are not bright people. Gwen, Joe Lara, as you outlined, Stacey, in your recap, these are not people that are smart, and Joe Lara flies this plane without any experience. It's a jet plane, by the way, everyone. It's not a little Piper Cub, that I hear is kind of more simplistic to fly. What in what sense does this guy take control of the plane? Yeah.
It's ego, it's entitlement,
and
it's arrogance.
Stupidity. And
stupid.
Yeah.
That narcissism and that ego really, I think, fueled the whole thing, the whole cult in general.
But again, I want to emphasize this kind of ignorance of these people, and we're going to see in a lot of the episodes we talk about. There's a baseline of just ignorance, that's going on here. But people, you're giving people something that they want. You're giving them answers. You want to raise your kids well, you beat them. There's your answer. You beat them to submission and have them read the Bible.
I've said this before, but there is no major about how to be a cult leader. You don't go to school to become a cult leader.
No.
But you find that it is a lot about ego, I believe.
Yeah.
Where you start maybe with good intentions, and then you see that a group of people are following and hanging on every single word that you say. I can make money doing this. I have an ego, and all these people are now following me. And I am going to continue to do this forever. There is no stopping, because there's also the fact too that a lot of that churches are not taxed either. So there's like the financial side of it too. But I think I'm really curious about the fact that since this documentary has come out, Remnant still has a ton of people, followers, as I like to say, still in the church. How is that?
How is that possible, John?
Yeah, well, here's something we have to own up to, admit, which is that these cults give people what they want. And in this case, it's who doesn't want to, lose weight? I don't even want to say be fit, because, that wasn't really one of their messages. It was just be skinny and go to heaven. Go to heaven.
And they drank a lot of alcohol too. So it wasn't like they were being, pure.
Look at the gifts that they propose to give people. You're going to be skinny, which is, especially in the US here, is a, very desirable thing. You're going to go to heaven.
Big deal. And big ticket.
And as parents, you're going to learn how to raise kids. We're going to give you the rules to raise kids. One of the things I often tell, and especially in parenting speeches and things I give, I say, nobody gives us a handbook on how to raise a child. But Gwen and her, evil people are saying, this is what you do. Beat him into submission and give him the Bible, and you're going to have a good kid. So you're hitting people, especially on aspects of life that they're very frustrated with, and they're difficult or traumatic. Our bodies, and is there an afterlife in heaven? And how do we raise our kids?
Yeah, and the child rearing thing, it's interesting. I'm not sure why they think that these things are going to make kids confident, not angry, not narcissistic, not sociopathic, not psychopathic. I mean, when we look at these true crimes, which we're going to be going into later, the way that children are raised when they become psychopaths, let's just say somebody like a mass murderer, they're raised by a mother who's controlling, or who says they hate women, or the women are the devil, or women are demons. And that sort of builds this crazy persona. And how do these people, all of these people are beating their kids? Is that how does that happen?
It goes back to what I keep saying here, is that there's this thread of ignorance. Maybe it's not a thread, it's a rope. It's a chain.
Yeah, a giant.
It pervades. That kind of child rearing is Neanderthal.
That's what it is.
Hundreds of years of just, we treat kids like they're little objects, or we know so much more of how to raise children, but these people don't use any of the principles and science we have in this field of how to properly raise a child. Instead, you just beat them. Well, that's what 10 generations ago we used to do with kids, and the tough guy and tough mom parenting. Well, we know better now. So go back to that ignorance. There's no which is a fundamental aspect of this whole thing. Is there's no credentials here. There's no really
credentials. Yeah.
foundation of facts or any credence to their beliefs. It's just, we make it up as we go, and
there's a lot of hypocrisy. There's
absolutely.
a lot of
always.
there's always, right, Stacey? Yes, always in life, in these specific cults, it's don't do as I do as I say.
Right.
And it really bothers me. And also the fact that there's like with children, with women, this obviously goes along with the church and what it's based on. There's just no empathy. It is about thinking about yourself. I didn't even get from the documentary that Gwen Shamblin truly cared about anybody else but Gwen Shamblin. And that is, and Dr. John, you can, back me up or not back me up, but I do believe that a lot of these people are really, truly, once they get that hint of that, oh, I can rule. Once they get that hint of it, there is no other thought of others. They may think that they're helping others, but the way that they do it, it's absurd.
That is such a great,
it makes me feel icky.
It's the lack of compassion, the lack of empathy. And talk about Jesus, by the way. Jesus, I mean, all of this bullshit that she's selling and giving, and this kind of grifter hawking this crap, is the kind of stuff that Jesus was against. He flipped over the tables in the temple. Ask a Jew if she knows about Jesus, and I do.
I'm going to ask you, Stacey. You're a Jew.
Yeah, I mean, yes. So, but this is all, nothing that Jesus taught is even part of these religious, these fundamentalist religious things. And, as John said, she had no ministry training. She created the Way Down workshop. Brilliant idea, using God. You can justify it. It's completely justifiable. So using God, she created this thing based on her nutrition experience, which none of it was nutrition. So, I think promoting eating disorders in all of these people and promoting child abuse in these people, how does anybody wake up? How do they wake up? How do they get out?
Let me comment first on what you both are talking about is, the classic power dynamic. And it goes back to some fundamental brain reinforcement. The more you get power, the more, you're going to, use it. You probably inappropriately, and power just begets power,
Power. Yep.
But now you ask, I think an extremely important question for us and our audience, which is, how do people get out, and what should you look for in these things? And let's go with what you look for. I mean, as we're trying to point out in this episode here, you look for the ridiculousness and the stupidity of this. Look at the evolution of this woman, and like we talk about, and again, we invite the audience to take a look at this documentary so you can see what we're talking about in terms of the appearance of Gwen and how crazy it looks. And this Joe Lara, which she marries, who almost like a Wayne Newton clone with all the plastic surgery and makeup.
He's like in formaldehyde or something.
Yeah, exactly.
He's preserved.
Look at the people that you're following. I mean, are these people that you would, sit down with dinner with or invite into your home? And although a lot of people I guess did,
Every single cult leader or person in a commercial cult, whether it's a commercial cult or this kind of a religious cult or a yoga cult or all these cults, it's the same exact formula. The person in charge doesn't really have in my opinion, you can tell me if this, they don't really have true knowledge. They're going with something and they're building it and then building it and then they're reinforcing it and they're believing it.
And no social awareness. It's like, do they look in the mirror and see, that is this really what people look like? So the message to people are, look at what you're involved in, look behind the curtain, so to speak, and also do some research. Look up some facts of what they're spouting. Is this based on anything that makes any sense? Let's face it, people want the guideposts, the rules of how to live, because we're not given that. We're not born with an instruction manual. And like Dori said earlier, even these cult leaders, nobody gives them there's no cult leader school. Right. That could be an interesting little spinoff for us, right? We could develop.
I think that's our next podcast, right? We're creating our own.
Let's get a curriculum together.
Oh, we could totally have a cult.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we're too smart for it. Like you said, it's just like riding on ignorance. And if you look at any cult leader, it seems like they've made it up as they go along. They make up their own rules because it's a religious thing. You can make up your own rules. Jesus said this, Jesus said that. I'm doing this because I'm the conduit to Jesus. I am between you and Jesus. In this religion, in IBLP, for example, only the man can talk to the spiritual leader who talks to God. There's a hierarchy. Women are not allowed.
We didn't even talk about how women were treated in this whole
women.
And it's
so the women,
it's so
and the
backward
children.
and so 300 years ago. Women have no voice. They're just obedient. They do what we say. You marry who we say. You have 16 kids. Whatever.
And the people below her. The Gwen is the rich one. She's the top of the pyramid. The people below her don't have the means to do things the way she can. So I always think it's interesting. These cult leaders want all their followers to do all these things. They don't have the money. They don't have the tools that the people with the money have. So I think it is very dangerous to tell. That's case in point, the kid who passed away that was locked in the room with the Bible. I mean, they didn't have any education. They didn't have any background. Do we have any concluding thoughts about this before we wrap?
Well, what I liked about this is Dr. John did talk about kind of like trying to get out of it. I think that was a good trying to get out of the cult. I do think that we went over a lot of the highlights of this documentary, but again, watch The Way Down. It's WAY, not like Stacey said, the plane going down the way, or for weight, WEIGH.
In case you want to buy the book.
Yes. So watch The Way Down. And then also, like Dr. John said, then come back and listen to us again. Listen to this episode again. And then maybe you can form your own thoughts too. But you can visit us. We have a lot of information, and you can subscribe to podcandypodcast.com. New episodes will be coming on various other cult documentaries, podcasts, mid-level marketing, true crime. Stacey and I love it all. Dr. John is the one to really put the professionalism in the Pod Candy, so we thank you for that. And that's kind of it, right? Like, this was really fun. I enjoyed
this.
Myself.
Was really fun.
Again,
Gwen Shamblin, The Way Down, HBO Max.
I can't wait to be asked back, so thank you.
Oh, Dori and I will talk and decide whether or not we want to have you back.
I'm already a hard no.
Oh, you're a hard no? All right. It's a hard no, John. Sorry.
All righty. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Pod Candy.